For me, it's the driving force behind my business. It is like the fire in my belly that actually allows me to view my business like an art project. The visuals, my fonts, my colors, like the way I'm interacting with my business all the time feels like I'm like in my studio pounding metal.
What would happen if you could trust the power of your story, the power of your voice and your art? What would happen if you took up more space with who you really are? My name is Caroline, and this is the Creative Visionary Podcast. I believe that storytelling changes the world. I'm a film director, podcast producer, and storytelling doula. And this podcast is designed to empower you, the creative visionary, coach, artist, healer, or all of the above, to tell your story, create powerful video, and launch your podcast so that your people can find you. Because they're out there right now, looking for what you do exactly the way that you do it. So, I'm sitting in my new office, my new studio space in Asheville, North Carolina. I have a lot to share about this space and what's happening in it. And what's so funny is even though I'm surrounded by cameras and all kinds of microphones, I'm recording this podcast intro on my phone. So, permission to show up in a slightly messy way. I am also about to play back, publish this episode, which was recorded in August of last year. So it's been freaking months with Natty Frasca. And it's all about business from the feminine perspective, which I know that feminine business kind of gets thrown around. And it's like, what the hell does that even mean? But Natty is a powerful leader. She's an artist. She's a mother. And the way that she shows up and is so inclusive in her work and on her podcast, The Feminine Rebellion, which I was on a while back, is so refreshing to me. She will just turn your fire and your spiciness on. We talk about creativity. We talk about how to really lean on strategy and actual marketing techniques that are a little bit more masculine, and how you need them and that they work so that your creativity and that more feminine energy can actually move and can actually come forward. This conversation is so alive. It's so juicy and real. It'll be a really good boost of energy for you, whatever it is that you're doing some work, doing the dishes, going for a walk. If you need some inspiration, a little bit of a pep talk, maybe you're feeling like you're in a spot in your business that feels a little overwhelming, or you feel a little confused on what to do next. We talk all about how taking tiny steps is the most powerful thing that you could ever do. We also talk about a little bit of a taboo topic, which is having a side hustle, working a fucking job while you're getting your business off the ground. So she's so refreshing. And I love this conversation. I love how much we talk about art and the creative process in this conversation. And I can't wait for you to listen. And I know that it's been a slightly inconsistent year for the pod so far, and I'm coming out on the other side of an intense little gap and moment in my life, to be totally honest. And I'm excited that the next season of the Creative Visionary Podcast is going to be filled with more interviews about creativity and spirituality and how those two worlds overlap, and shooting here in the studio in person and talking to more artists. So I'm pumped on that. That'll be happening, end of spring into the summer. And what else is coming up is the next round of Spoken is happening in May. I will be teaching my totally free podcasting workshop, How to Launch Your Profitable Podcast. It's called Authentic Voice. It's happening at the beginning of May. So stay tuned for that and for the way to sign up for that. If you've got any questions about these things, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at I am Caroline Aylward. It is going to be lit. It's always lit. Spoken is always the vibe. If you've been wanting to launch your podcast and you want to make money with your podcast, you want to create a podcast from a place of creativity and authenticity, you want to be guided through every single step of the way, you want to kind of move any overwhelm with the tech, and I don't have enough time, out of the way and just do the damn thing and share your voice, this is for you. It's going to be such a powerful round. I can already feel it. So you can actually grab your seat for Spoken right now in the pre-sale, which means that you save money if you claim your seat right now. I will put the link in the show notes. You can get in right now for a small deposit and opt into a payment plan as well. The total price of Spoken is $999, so $999. The early bird price is $777, and the pre-sale price is $677, and you can get in right now for a deposit of $222. That's all you need to put down. So we love making this accessible for all of you who want to get in and be held in this creative space. I really also like to stress that this program is live, and it is a Q&A style, mastermind style workshopping of your ideas in real time. This isn't just follow the steps and go off on your own. This is bring your ideas, your issues, your hesitations to me. Let's workshop them as a group. That's why I like to keep it intimate. The size of the group, I like to keep it intimate. So if you're feeling like so many that social media is great and helpful, but you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket and you want to grow your business and create a new funnel into your business and put your voice out into the world and have these conversations, podcasting is for you, Spoken is for you, and I'm excited to work with you. So buckle up for this beautiful, delicious conversation about feminine business and pleasure and making art from just a really grounded mama, leader, badass woman. I love you so much. Podcasters, I want to let you in on the platform that we use to host this very podcast and what we use to publish this show across all platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. We also use this very program inside of my podcast launch course, Spoken, and with all of our private podcast production clients. This platform is called Libsyn. That is Libsyn. Libsyn is the industry standard for publishing podcasts, and their support team is always so helpful. Upload your episode and your show notes, and Libsyn handles the rest. Get up to 2 months of free podcast hosting from Libsyn with my promo code HELMET in all caps. See this episode's show notes to get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Get your show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, get helpful stats, and get to podcasting and sharing your story. Yay! Okay, first of all, just for everybody listening, creative visionaries, I'm here with Natty Frasca. We had a beautiful conversation yesterday where I was on her podcast. And so anyone listening who has a podcast, do podcast swaps. They are so fruitful and nourishing and incredible for growing your podcast and having beautiful conversations. So just wanted to put that on the altar. I so enjoyed our conversation yesterday. And now we get to do like a part 2 or like a part 1.5, where now I get to ask you all the juicy questions about your journey and learn the ins and outs of your work. So I'm so grateful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. It is so, so good to be here. And I do feel like this is part 2, this is a continuation of yesterday. And yeah, I'm just ready to let the juices flow again.
I know. It's so good. It's so organic, and it's so incredible to connect with people, other women in business, artists that you really vibe with and jive with, and it's easeful and you understand each other's missions. And I know that really came forward yesterday, and it's going to come forward in this conversation. And it's just, it helps you in feeling like you belong in the world. It helps you in feeling like,
yes,
what you have to say makes sense. Keep going, that you're on the right path. I mean, that's at least how I have felt in meeting and chatting with you.
Yeah. And that you're not alone, right? And you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with me. Like the more you connect with other female entrepreneurs, it's like, oh yeah, me too. Like this shit is hard. Like sit with me, like light the fire under my ass, like tell me to keep going, tell me that I'm on the right track, like, or hold me when things are falling apart, like
Also that.
all of it, all of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
which
yes.
happens, right? Like,
Woo!
yeah,
Yes.
in order to build a business, it's like you need this, like, you know, conviction, this fire under your ass, deep belief in your work, and women in your corner. Um, that's just been a game changer for me.
Absolutely. I know it's so much of what your brand is about. So, as we dive into this, the first question that I love to ask all of my people: what does creativity mean to you?
Mm, oh my gosh. For me, creativity is high play. So when I like close my eyes and think about creativity, I think that it is a force that is always like kind of flowing through us. And in order to kind of like tap into it, we need to make these spaces for our creativity to flow. Um, so creativity is a huge part of my business. I mean, I too am an artist, went to art school. Like, um, for me, it's like, for me, it's the driving force behind my business. It is like the fire in my belly that actually allows me to view my business like an art project,
Mm,
which is how I view it. Like the visuals, my fonts, my colors, like the way I'm interacting with my business all the time feels like I'm like in my studio pounding metal, or like I've got a huge canvas on the wall and I'm like throwing paint at it and I'm like covering parts of it up or layering new things on, or um yeah,
it's so beautiful.
creativity is a freaking journey. I don't know if I answered your question,
No,
but
you
like
totally did. And
that's
now, as you answer it, I'm like, this is exactly the common thread between how we both feel about approaching entrepreneurship and our brands. And yeah, that's what I crave too. And I think all of your people, all of my people, everybody listening are going to be like, me too. Like, that's how I want my business to feel. That's how it
yeah,
deserves to feel. So beautifully said. So, with going to art school, let's just dive into that. And you just had this
yeah,
beautiful kind of like painting metaphor. Is that something that you did? Is that what you do? What was your focus then?
yeah. So I went to art school when I had two little babies. First, I started when I had an infant, and I never graduated or got a degree. I wasn't able to finish, unfortunately, but I think I got what I needed to get out of it.
Cool.
So I went to the museum school in Boston for sculpture,
Cool.
um, and metal. So, yeah, I created small sculptures and like sculptural jewelry. So like huge neck pieces and like really far out stuff.
Wow.
Um, and that process, though, like the process of creation, like going into the studio with a hunk of metal
Yes.
and being like, how am I going to cut it? What am I building? Like it was this iterative process, which is like being an entrepreneur, right? Like
Yes.
you have to learn how to pivot, right? I mean, sometimes I would take a bunch of metal and be like, okay, I'm just freaking going to the foundry and melting all this shit back down to nothing. Like I'm
Yeah.
starting from scratch. But it's like, you're
Ooh.
never really starting from scratch, right? Like you're never really starting from scratch. You're kind of learning like what didn't work in the last
Yes.
round.
Yes.
And like, it's like this whole chaos is your compost metaphor, right? It's
Hmm.
like, I'm never I'm never really starting from ground zero. So like art school kind of taught me that like there's always more creativity in me. I'm always learning. There's always space to kind of like rebuild or change direction.
Yes.
And then it's all fucking perfect. It's like all part of the process.
Exactly. I mean, the
Yeah.
change is the only constant, right? Like it's inevitable. The evolution of you and your
Yeah.
creativity and your business and your brand and your art
Yeah.
is inevitable because our change as humans is inevitable. And I love this like visual of having this hunk of metal and being like, okay, okay, what am I going to turn this into? And just kind of like,
Mm.
all right, I guess I'll just take a little bit off here. What does that inspire inside of me? What's next? What are you kind
Yes.
of coming to that
Exactly.
with? Like maybe there's already some inspiration in your head. Maybe you feel like you have some like, I don't know, the metal sculpting version of writer's block, right? Like,
Yes.
and it's just taking that next step forward. And I think a lot of creative visionaries, a lot of entrepreneurs we're definitely tasked with that, right? Like we have this passion. There's a reason you wanted to pick up the metal in the first place. And then what are you going to turn it into?
Mm.
And we get to do that in our businesses, whether it's like having a production company or being a coach or, whatever it is that you do, whatever your metal
Yes.
is. And then that's what's sometimes the most scary is like, what do I do first? And you're telling me I get to do anything that I want here. So how do I know what's right and what's
Mm.
wrong?
Oh God, this is so good. Yeah. And I think what I try to sink into, like I still have an art studio where I make stuff. Like that's how I that gets infused into my business, right? Like I need those spaces to
Yes.
create.
Yes.
Um, but I always tell myself, like, I'm never done, right? So last year I worked in a painting, a huge fucking piece. And I was inspired by some abstract work that I saw while I was like at the Institute of Contemporary Art. And I was like, oh, I want to like create something like that, right? Um, and I worked on it for like 6 months. I hung it in my office and like I would just went away for 3 months and I came back to Boston and I like looked at the painting and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not done with this. Like I have a collection of like Japanese porn from when I lived in Tokyo, like all of this crazy shit, imagery. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God. So I'm going to take that painting down like in a couple weeks when I have more time and after I clean my studio, and I'm gonna layer this imagery of the Japanese porn like over this very soft, abstract kind of blushy, simple
Mm,
piece. And I'm like, okay, so you're never fucking done. So like, so
right.
many entrepreneurs are like, okay, I have this vision for a business, and I have to like stick with this one vision.
Right.
But I think that's one of the things that keeps people stuck. Like we talked about yesterday, like your creative process started with making this film about your grandfather.
Hmm.
And like now you've like built a fucking production company. I hope I can swear on this podcast, by the
You
way.
absolutely can. I encourage it.
Yeah. Okay. Like you've built this amazing production company. You're supporting female entrepreneurs. Like there's a thread that goes through all of it and it's always changing and it's always evolving and like don't get stuck. Like if you have an idea for something, fucking play with it, right? Bring it to your quote unquote art studio and like
Yes.
fuck around a bit, right? Fuck around and find out. That's one of my favorite sayings.
Yes. 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 All of this just feels like permission in my body. Like, because I know, and
Yeah.
for me and for so many people listening, it's like, yeah, I mean, we see all around us constantly examples and little, social constructs of how to live and be and exist and operate in this planet, on this planet.
Yes.
And there are a lot of us who feel like that's bullshit. I don't want to live my life that way. I don't want to create my business that way. It doesn't feel good
Right.
to me and it doesn't work for me. And I'm sure I'm excited to
Yeah.
hear more about your business journey because for me, I tried to plug myself into a box that I saw working for so many people around me of like the of a marketing model that works, right? Like launching your webinar and selling your online course and then just selling that same course over
Oh
and over and
yeah.
over again, which is it works. It works. I mean, you make so much money, right? But And
Yeah.
now that I have my podcast course, I feel so much more aligned to do something like that, to kind of stay in that
Mm,
lane and like and pour my energy into that consistency. It feels aligned for me. And
yes.
I've given myself the
Yes.
permission for my podcast course to evolve, to become more of a creative mastermind.
Mm,
Back then, 5
yes.
years ago, I was teaching a course that, yeah, I mean, I loved supporting women on their anxiety and their body image, but my body was like, go to storytelling, go to storytelling, go to storytelling. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to
Mm,
stick to this one
mm,
course that I've created because like I've already created it and I got to
mm.
stay in this lane. Stay here, stay here. Don't bounce around, Caroline. Don't be
Yes.
messy. Don't be
I
messy.
exactly. Don't be messy.
It's a
Yeah, but this is
story.
the thing. Like, yeah, it is a fucking story. And like for so many of us, like, the women I'm working with, many of them are transitioning right from kind of full-time careers. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Where like you're a cog in the wheel of a corporation, right?
Right.
And so there's not a lot of room for kind of creativity or pivoting, or like the example that we're shown is like pick one thing and stick with it, right? But we became entrepreneurs for a fucking reason because we didn't want to do that anymore,
Right.
right? Like we wanted more freedom, we wanted more creativity, we wanted to like work on the road, we wanted to have a little bit more flexibility. Like I don't want to work a fucking 9 to 5.
And to feel excited.
And yeah, I want to feel excited about my work,
Yeah.
right? And our paths are so similar, Caroline, because like when I started my business, it was really kind of on the heels of like nearly getting divorced. And so
Mm.
my story was like all about kind of like reclaiming my desires and finding my voice as a woman, as a mother, as a partner. Um,
Mm.
and and how I kind of found myself and began to like speak about what I wanted and create a life I wanted. So I was attracting women who were in similar spaces and I was coaching them through this kind of journey of finding their voice and finding pleasure. Um, and then as I spent more and more time at my art studio and I was working with other coaches and entrepreneurs were reaching out to me and saying, you've created this brand, you're creating this business. How are you doing it?
Right.
And so like a year and a half ago or almost 2 years ago, I started kind of coaching on the side these women who wanted to kind of do the same thing that I had done, for my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Like these are like, all these people are coming to me with art projects,
I know.
basically.
Back to that. Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Every client's like a fucking art project. And I'm like, this is so fun. And all the other stuff is not gone. Like I talk about pleasure. I talk about our
Right.
bodies. I talk about using our voices. I talk about our desires for the world. I talk about like our mission driven work. Like all of it is still here.
Yes.
Right. It's just
Yes.
like, I'm just
Exactly.
like following. Yeah. It's all still here. I'm just like, I'm following all of these little like desires really inside of me, that feeling where you're like, ooh, 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 like this is fun, I like this, I want more of this please.
Yes. I love this
And
so
it's all woven
much.
together.
It's still here. And I want everyone listening to really anchor into this, that like wherever you're at on your journey, on your path, it's like walking into that art studio with a big hunk of metal. It's like, okay, how do I know what to do? What's the first step? There's no mistakes, there's no failures, right? It's just experimentation and
Mm-mm.
getting curious.
Mm.
And for you, it's like doing this work and pleasure and desire, and then it, evolving into business coaching in a sense. And but there's
Yeah.
still always this golden thread of all of these original things that you were feeling called to really lean
Yes.
into. Of course, because in order to have an aligned, authentic, successful business, pleasure's got to be there, and like sharing your voice has got
Yeah.
to be there. Authenticity has got to be there, right?
Yes.
So it's like, even for
Yes.
like when I got started with the Get a Helmet podcast and was speaking a lot on anxiety and mental health and body image, I mean, I was making art about body image. I made a film about body image. I was still sharing stories about mental health. Storytelling was always there. And so
Mm.
this is an invitation for everybody listening to just find your golden thread, find your core, your rock, your number one like overarching theme of everything that it is that you do, because it can weave through all of it, right? And no matter if you're like kind of evolving over here or going over here and going and doing this way, I'm going to start this program now. It's like that your why you show up every single day is still there. You know, it's always still there. And
Yes.
to me, that was like
Yes.
that kind of like container that we do, like I do need, or else I would probably be like doing 7,000 different things. It's like the container so that you can make
Yes.
progress in your business and there is consistency required, but there's still so much
Yes.
freedom for evolution and
Yes.
expression within
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I would say it's like the masculine and the feminine, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like, you know, in the feminine rebellion, we call this like, creating your rebel message. And your rebel message for the world, like your why is infused into that. Like we say, like, it's your why, it's your vision, and it's your wildness. Like those three elements go into your rebel message. And when I go back 7 years ago to when I started this thing, um, my message was always the same. It was to inspire and ignite the voices of women. And like, that's still my fucking message today. Like,
Exactly.
I am here to like inspire, elevate the voices of women who are out in the world and doing the work,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yes.
I want to be with the people who are like pushing love and justice. I want to be with the people who are like, fuck, let's fucking change the world together.
Yes.
Like, let's go. And like, it hasn't shifted. Maybe before it was about like mothers and partners and who were who were kind of creating a ripple effect through being more authentic and using their voice. And now I'm working with entrepreneurs, but
Right.
we're the thread. We're the fucking thread, right? The
Yes.
creators.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go back to, when we first connected, which seems to be exactly when you were starting you starting your business, which is so interesting because that's such a big
Mm,
time, right? There's just like this huge energy like surrounding that time. And so I was living in Boston. We connected on social media. Or no, we connected through a friend. Through a friend. I was
yeah.
hosting different events for In This Body, my short film, and you were wanting to learn more about pleasure. So this seems to be like now we're what, 7 years later? Like
Yeah.
take us
Yeah.
back to that moment and what was calling you to explore pleasure? Where were you in your life?
Yeah.
And like what was unfolding?
Yeah, sure. So basically where I was in my life 7 years ago, I guess I had a 12-year-old, an 11-year-old, and an 8-year-old. I had been married for like 15 years.
Wow.
Um, I was the executive director of a nonprofit in Boston. And I was doing all the things that I was supposed to be doing and was pretty miserable and
Wow.
burned out. And I started talking to other women about how I was feeling.
Mhm.
Um, my marriage was kind of falling apart. We are still married. We figured out our shit.
It's incredible.
As we do every day, right?
Yes. Yes.
Every day figuring out our shit. Um, but I started like being a little bit more vocal about my journey and how kind of tapped out I was. And women were like, "Oh my god, me too, me too, me too."
Totally.
Um, and I just became like, what I wanted to do was to open up a space, a physical space in Boston for just women
Mm.
to explore like pleasure, sensuality, like slowing down, coming back to our desires. Because what I was learning is that I had been living this life, chasing imaginary finish lines, checking shit off off all the boxes, and kind of totally forgot about myself. Like I was doing everything I was taught to do.
Mm.
And I was promised that I was all of a sudden going to be happy at 40 with like beautiful children and a nice home and a marriage. And yet I was like dying inside.
Mm.
Um, so my original idea was like kind of a pleasure den, desire place for women to kind of like explore their bodies and their intuitions um and that's when I first reached out to you.
Mm.
Um and then it seemed like I actually had a lease on a place right before COVID. And I was about to sign on the dotted line to
Wow.
create the space for women. And then COVID hit. I got myself out of the lease,
Wow.
and then started coaching. Yeah. So I had done like a few little gatherings around Boston.
Cool.
And, and yeah, and then I kind of like entered into this kind of more coaching world,
Yep.
like expanded the feminine rebellion. And here we are.
And here we are. Wow. Your story, I know, is hitting the hearts of everyone listening because it's
Mm.
such that classic story. You know, it's like chasing these imaginary finish lines, and I have all these things, and I should be grateful. I should be happy. And then there's all
Oh
this
my God,
guilt
that's
that
it.
comes up.
That's it.
Yeah, and then there's so much guilt, right? And the guilt and the shame,
Yeah.
I mean,
What's wrong with me?
exactly. It's just the heaviest thing, and
What? Yeah.
it makes it worse. It
Yeah.
makes it so much worse. Then you
It
feel
does
like
make
you're
it
kind of
worse.
losing it because you're like, I should totally be happy. But then all that's necessary is an internal a shift where you're actually listening to what it is that you desire and taking action from that place. It doesn't mean all of the other things need to go away. I think you're a beautiful example of this.
Right.
You can have all of these things
Yeah.
if you desire to have them, and also open up a pleasure den, start the feminine rebellion, do the thing that is calling,
Yes.
that it's igniting your heart, that's helping you feel the joy of being alive, because
Yes.
we all deserve that, and it doesn't need to look like anybody else's version of that. And I think that, gosh, we get so swept up in hitting those marks, and it's such an interesting conversation, right? And I'm such a Libra in this way where I love to find the balance, and it's like, listen, partnership, we all
Yes.
desire partnership for a reason, right? Like we want to have connection with another person and have someone to grow old with. Totally get that. Beautiful. Bringing children into the world, beautiful. If that's your thing. Procreation, awesome. And then it's like, so we want to check these boxes, and then we need money, right? Money is required to like exist on this planet.
Yes.
So I get it,
Yes.
right? We get like, well, how do I have to accomplish these things, or these things are like the right things, which I desire all of those things. And I will continue to build my business from the core of my being and to make my art, because it feels like
Yes.
I'm in an art studio every single day, like you're saying. And all of our
Yes.
journeys are like a little bit different, but it's just the desire and the passion inside of you is so valid. It's so valid, and it's there for a
Mm.
reason.
It is. And like, I feel like it's like strikes of divinity, like from spiritually speaking, like we're talking about creativity.
Right.
It's like it comes from up here and it's just like whoosh, like
Yes.
you feel it. Like when you feel like I have to do this, like follow that feeling. And like I think so many entrepreneurs like or like women who are like at this very beginning stage are like, "Oh my god, can I really do that? Can I really build a business?" But it's like start small, right? Like I started having little tiny gatherings in my living room
Mm.
with women when I was kind of like going through the muck of my life. I was
Yeah.
like, I need to figure out who else feels this way. And like, first it was like 2 women, and then it was 4 women, and then it was like 7 women. And then I was like, maybe we should open this up. Maybe this is going somewhere. But like, it started with like a fucking text message
Hmm.
being like, am I alone in this? And like, I don't want this to be a bitch session. This is
Yeah.
not like come over and like complain about your life. This is like come over and talk about what else you want.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, it's like it starts from the tiniest thing. Like, don't look, 7 years down the road. Like, you can hold that vision too. I
Yeah.
think that's important, right? But really, like, allow yourself to start small and take little tiny baby turtle steps and, like, kind of testing the water along the way. Like,
Yes.
it doesn't have to be some big splashy thing.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like that's been my entire life, and I think it's the way to do anything and everything. I mean, especially for me with like a background and history of anxiety and like nervous system activation. It's like I got to
Yes.
take these little baby
Yes.
steps, and to the rest of the world they might look really big. But I've been taking teeny tiny little baby turtle steps
Yes.
for a long time, turning my microphone on in my
Yes.
grandpa's spare bedroom when I was just talking to a wall. Like, if you have a desire
Yes.
to explore this path within you, right? Like, what is one tiny step that you can take? It's a filmmaking desire, what if you just started to look at the world a little bit differently and filming things on your phone that you found beautiful? Just like the next time you're like,
Mm.
"Oh, that light looks really pretty." Film it. Get your camera out and film it and just start. Or writing, right? What if you started
Yes.
with 10 minutes a day? 10 minutes a day. Just commit to that
Mm.
with no plan of what
Mm.
you're even fucking writing. Just write it, right? Like morning pages style.
Yes.
If it's coaching,
Yes.
it's like get your community on calls, right? Like ask them if they want to do a 20-minute connection call, and start with your friends, start with the women in your yoga class. Like, see how you can get some information and uncover some things and just take those baby steps. I mean, I don't know what I would do without those baby steps.
I love what you said, Caroline, about your nervous system because, like, you know, and all these baby steps. It's like when I like was kind of entering this journey, like I wasn't. I mean, I was on Instagram a little bit, like posting pictures of like my dogs and stuff, but like I wasn't like in the coaching like female entrepreneurial world. So I had no idea like what people were doing or what I should look like or anything about it, which I think was a freaking gift
Yes.
because I wasn't comparing myself to anyone.
Yes.
I had no fucking idea what I was doing, and it was a beautiful thing. But now, like, this kind of world feels like it's exploding a little bit, and what I find with a lot of my clients is there's a lot of like comparisonitis, I call it, right?
Definitely.
Like comparing yourself to people who are way further along, but what you're not seeing is like the decades of work that came
Right.
before the brand, the podcast, whatever, the huge launches. Like, this
Yeah.
shit takes time. And like, we were sold, like, when I first started like dipping my toe into this world, like there were a lot of like really famous coaches out there who were like, "Oh, follow my method and make $1 million in your first launch."
Right.
Like, don't believe the hype.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like be ready for the slow burn, like just
Yes. Yes,
be freaking
absolutely.
committed and take those little baby turtle steps and soothe your nervous system along the way because
Yeah,
you'll
support
need those
yourself.
tools.
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, like I have so much to say on like honestly just the coaching industry in general, and I've been kind of vocal about it lately. But I think that
Yeah.
it's so important to commit to your dreams and your visions and also support yourself. Like if you're working a job, like keep your job. As so many people will say like quit your job, quit your job.
Mm,
Make your money, honey.
no.
And get yourself
Exactly.
into a consistent space. And there will be a time to take a leap that feels scary, but you will also be able to regulate your nervous system in that space. There's again, it's this balance of, do you have that like I don't know if anyone listening or if you, Natty, do the to be magnetic work, but they call it the FU fund, like
Oh
the
yeah.
fuck you fund, where like before you take the leap, have your
Yes.
money like set there. You've got a few months that you can, or more, like maybe 3 to 6 months of money that you can live comfortably and then take the leap. And I mean, gosh, like, did I have that?
Yes.
Absolutely fucking not. I did not have that. I was jumping off of bridges and all kinds of things, investing tens of thousands of dollars in coaches. And did I make it back? Yes. Would I have done it differently? Well, I don't know if I would have done it differently, but I was so swept up in the hype of like leap and like take the jump and da da da. And I'm just like, you're
Mm,
still good enough if you work a job. And you're also so good enough if you have a job that you work for someone else and it sets your soul on fire. This isn't about
yeah.
glorifying entrepreneurship or the coaching industry being like the cool girls table at like in high school and you're not allowed to sit there
Mm-mm,
unless you fucking
mm-mm.
make $1 million. Like it's about you staying authentic to you and supporting yourself. And whatever that looks like, you
Yeah.
know what that is. And like you're saying, the comparison, unfollow all those motherfucking people. I have gone through like an unfollowing,
Thank you.
like,
Me
bye.
too. Me too. Me too. I know. It's like it's so funny because like I go through I do unfollows regularly.
Yes.
And then
Good.
like anyone who's even like in my space, if you're not a friend of mine, like I don't want to see your work because I actually don't want to be influenced by your work.
I
Like
agree.
I want my work to be my own, and so I don't want to see other people's things that are a little related because I don't know, I just want my stuff to be mine. Like I don't want to take in
Yeah.
other people's things, right? I want like it's like cleaning my art studio, right? Like like it's okay
Yes.
to like it's okay to like go to the museum or go to art galleries and get inspiration, but then I come home and I make my own shit, right?
Ah,
Um
yes. Such
so there's like a
permission.
difference, right? There's a yeah, permission, right? And there's a difference between like being inspired and being like getting that kind of like heaviness, which I remember like there was someone who was like wait like probably like 10 years ahead of me like back then, but she was like doing amazing things and I had no fucking clue who she was. She was just like an internet superstar, but I was like, oh my god, yes, like why can't I do that, like why can't I, why aren't I that far along, or and it made
Mm,
my whole body like just,
mhm.
our body is so wise, right? Like want to kind of just like curl up and quit, really, instead
100%.
of just like focusing on like my own thing. And
Yes.
now it's so funny because like, yeah, I don't even know where this person is, but um yeah, it's just we just like kind of need to stay in our lane and like follow those threads. And what you said about the side gig is like, I fucking love a side gig. And like,
Yes.
I will, if I said this, I think I say this multiple times a week to clients, is like, the side gig is awesome. The side gig is support. The side gig is like, you know, I'm sorry, the main job is support. And like the side gig is like the art studio, right? Like you get to fucking play. Like
Mhm.
having it as a side gig for a little while keeps it fucking fun.
Yeah,
When you come home at 5:30, you're like excited to dive in.
exactly. It's like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about like not suffocating your creativity. And I think that, it's
Mm,
something that I have to be really mindful of because running a business, it's a business, right? You can't have a business without sales. You got to launch your stuff. You got to sell your stuff.
yes.
I try to sell every day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then sometimes I feel a little bit like my creativity is being suffocated and I want to have another avenue of income coming in, which is why I'm really focused right now on getting my podcast course evergreen and getting everything automated. So I'm just like,
Yes.
see ya. So I can just make art. I
Yes.
literally have a post-it note that I wrote. I'll just read it. I wrote it the other night.
Yeah.
And it says, I'm building my online business so that more women can share their voice and creativity with the world. And so I can have financial freedom to make and direct really powerful, impactful films. So
Mm,
while my production company is an avenue of money making and income, that's my biggest goal is like, can I just have this money? Like these things are set up and the money is rolling so that I can then just go make art. That's kind of like where I
yes.
landed. And
So you can like go to Europe, right? And like
yes,
play and make
exactly.
art. Yes.
Yes. I
Yes.
think,
Yes. God, what would I so yeah, I'm just trying to like dream about that. What would I do?
mm,
Um if everything were like evergreen and like it was like that kind of like well-oiled machine where you're like dipping in.
yep.
Um like, I guess I would travel,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? I
I
would
feel that.
like once a month take a week, or every other month just like take a week and
Oh,
see a new place, and like
yes.
bring my drawing pad and like,
Yes.
yeah. Or maybe I'd go to art school in a different country.
Oh my god. I would love to do that.
How, right? Like maybe you have to like learn the language or don't learn the language and just like, I don't know,
Oh my
like
god, that would be
where would
amazing.
that would be so cool. Or learn graffiti. Like I
Whoa.
want to like learn how to use spray paint and like create street art. That would be
Oh,
cool.
I love that so much.
God,
It's
so many things.
such a fun thing to dream about, you know? And I think like
Yeah.
for me, I used to resist the funnels and the automations and the evergreen. I used to be like, no, that's so bro marketing. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, that's going to suffocate my creativity. And then over the years, I've that's changed entirely, especially this year. I've been like, oh, absolutely not. Now the intention within me has landed so strongly that like all of that means that I've got passive income rolling in and I can go just to Europe to film someone living in a village who I find interesting, that eventually I could get funding for a film perhaps, but like the initial
Yes.
creative spark is just because I want to tell that story and like cool.
Yeah, right? And this, you bring up something so interesting because like I think, as like kind of like feminists and anti-bro marketing, like we can go so far down that rabbit hole that we like don't like lean into strategy. And it's it's a weaving, right? So it's like you need some fucking strategy. Like
Yes.
the strategy, like let's bring it back to the masculine and the feminine, right? It's like, strategies like your teacup and, everything inside that delicious herbal tea is your like feminine creativity. And like you need both. Like
Yes.
without the coffee cup or the teacup, like your tea is just fucking all over the kitchen table. So
Exactly. Exactly.
like you need a little bit of structure, and like the evergreen thing, maybe it's for your listeners, maybe it's not, but like you have to decide what it is,
Yeah.
what the strategy is in your business that does feel good to you, right? Because we didn't start businesses to be like married to them, right?
Right.
It's like I was married to my 9 to 5.
Right.
Like,
We want the freedom.
yeah,
You want the
I
spaciousness.
want freedom, fun, wildness. I want connection with my friends who are right here in my town, right? I want to go visit my kids at college. I want to go to an art studio or a dance class on a Wednesday night. Like,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I want it
Exactly.
all, Caroline.
I know. I just think that your story and your work and the way that you show up in the world is so authentic and powerful. And
Mm,
it's so, it just creates so much space for so many other women, people to be themselves, to just express from their core and not from what everybody else is telling them
mm.
to do. And, you know, just like even just talking about the unfollowing thing, like unfollowing people, I'm like, oh my God, like my people pleaser is like, they're going to think I hate them. And I'm like, I really don't hate you. I'm just really trying to protect my energy. I'm trying to protect my creative energy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
yes. And so, yeah, I just think do what you need to do to stay in your power and in your uniqueness, in your authenticity.
Mm,
Take what you want from people that you're learning and leave the rest. And then spend some time leaving all of it.
yes.
Spend some time putting all of it away and just writing
Yes.
for 10 minutes. What's coming out? What's coming forward? What do you
Mm.
think? If no marketing strategy, if
Oh,
no coaching industry existed, how the fuck would you show up? What would you do without any of those structures? Like,
I love that.
it's like, oh, okay. If nobody were
That's
telling me the
that's
right
so
way to
good.
do it, like, how would I do it? And innovate.
And it's yes, and that is, and like disrupt, right?
Yes.
Like you don't have to do it every. And I say this to my clients too. Like I don't want you to build a business that looks like mine. Like I want you to build a
Right.
business that feels like you. Like you don't need to follow my strategies, but let's like find a strategy that like makes you want to fucking show up every day.
Exactly. That's the whole
Right.
point. I know. And I think we see like these carbon copies of coaches and coaches and coaches and coaches and coaches. And it's like, wow, like it's getting lost there. We're losing the whole point of like, we
Yeah.
started this path of entrepreneurship for creative expression, for, financial freedom, for, authenticity. And so it's so interesting. I think we're at this very interesting point right now where
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, I'm noticing that all these kind of people are doing the same thing and using the same strategy and launching the same thing. That doesn't feel good either. So it's like the pendulum is swung to the
No.
other side and there's this return
Yeah.
to you and
Yeah.
your wisdom and your intuition. And that's just
Yes.
like, that's why we're all here in the first place.
Yes. This is exactly why we chose this journey.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
please share with
Yeah.
us what's alive in your business and how people can jump in and join you and be supported
Yeah.
by you.
Yeah, sure. So in October, I'm launching the second round of my kind of community course called Rebels Rising. Um, and this is where like we really nail down your rebel message, but it's like it's in a group of women and it's circle and everyone fucking contributes. But we work on messaging, we talk about pleasure and marketing. We really help women entrepreneurs who are like kind of building out their brand, build the foundation,
Yes.
really. So it's like get rooted in, their story, get rooted in their message, um, build out their first offer,
Love that.
create a little bit of a visibility strategy for Instagram, that feels
Yes.
good to them. And even things like create their like welcome sequence for email. Like I'm a huge fucking email proponent. I'm
Yes.
like, email your people.
Yes.
Um,
Automate.
so all of that, it's really like, yeah, it's like foundational business stuff, but in this like delicious pleasure den um
Yes.
container. So that's gonna roll in October. And beyond that, like, I do private one-on-one stuff, with women. So basically almost like Rebels Rising, but like amped up one-on-one, me in your back pocket. So all of that, you could just go to thefemininerebellion.com or follow me on Instagram at the Feminine Rebellion, DM me, you know.
And listen to your
Yeah, that's what
podcast.
I'm doing. Oh my God. Thank you, Caroline. Listen to the podcast where I'm igniting and amplifying the voices of women who are out in the world and doing the fucking work. And I recorded with Caroline yesterday. So definitely we had a delicious conversation. Um, so yeah, so that's it. It's all good. I'm fucking,
Doing the
living life,
thing.
building a business, and doing the fucking thing. And it,
Yes.
it feels pretty good most days.
I think that, for those of you listening, if there's that kind of desire to start your business and you're just getting started and you want to work with someone who can really encourage you to stay in your authenticity and in your power and create from your heart, I think that this
Mm.
is a beautiful option for you. And yeah, I think that this will probably set a lot of souls on fire, this conversation. So I'm so
Mm.
grateful. We
I
went
hope
so many
so.
different little roads. I feel like we could just
It
keep
was so
talking forever.
good. We
Yes.
could, and we will one day. I'm going to like drive down to Asheville and just,
Yes.
you know, put a tent in your backyard.
I know. Isn't that so funny? I feel like I've connected with so many incredible people over social media on Instagram, and I'm like, we've never met in person. It's just like so crazy. But
I just went to a wedding of a woman I'd never met in person in Ireland, right? It's
no
like,
way. I love
yeah,
that.
so this is the connection is real and
Yeah,
connection is what we need, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So everybody go follow the Feminine Rebellion, go listen to the podcast, and have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day. Thank you so much, Natty, for being here.
Thank you. Mwah.
Yay!